The starting point for this webinar and the initiative that Jonathan's described, the toolkit, and most of E3M's work has been very much the practical perspective, engaging with the public service environment. In my case, 30 years worth of engagement, acting mainly for public benefit organisations. And in the course of that experience, my observation and E3M's observation and the observation of many we engage with is of 5 systematic problems with the framing concepts and with the implementation of public services. And I'm just going to quickly run through those as headlines. The first is the way that commissioning of public services is not differentiated from market purchasing in the way we think about the processing of the achievement of public services, best value public services. We have the same public procurement rules for both. Those public procurement rules are derived from European competition law, so they're not bespoke rules for delivering best value public services, although with the objectivity principles they'll apply to that purpose. What that means is, in relation to commissioning, we're de-emphasising complexity, analysis, exploration, long and short-term balance, and professional judgment, and we're over-emphasising price and commercial incentivisation. It doesn't mean the market isn't the solution to some things, but it means the market is certainly not the solution to others. And in any event, the public services are needed, whether the market's providing or not. So commissioning is much broader than simply purchasing in a market. The second problem is related, and it's more directly to do with process. It's the conflation of commissioning with procurement. They're not the same thing. Commissioning you would think of as the broader idea of how best value public services, optimum public services are delivered. Procurement is a process for achieving a contract on objective principles. The conflation, therefore, de-emphasises how far commissioning is about the professional deployment of a range of methodologies and instruments. It doesn't deal with subsidy, it doesn't deal with investment, it doesn't deal with community engagement and facilitation and partnership. It focuses on service contracts. Actually, of course, as Jonathan has said, the rules themselves are permissive and flexible and purposive, so you can apply them within the context, this broader context of commissioning, but too often we see the two things seen as the same thing, and we don't see that broader context in play. And that's very specifically true when we're talking about public benefit organisations, dedicated, innovative public benefit organisations, social enterprises, charities, community organisations, who will tend to think in terms of initiation and innovation. And when we start with a public procurement process, you're not starting in the right place, because you're not starting where the innovation and the initiation is. The procurement rules provide a process called the innovation partnership, which is different to a service contract. It's about procuring a partner to work with the public authority to develop and then deliver, but it's massively underutilised as we currently engage with public services. There are 1 or 2 cases. Oldham is one, Leicestershire is another. They're both award-winning for innovation, and that really tells its own story. Both of those problems might be summarised by the third, which is that we see over and over again process over purpose, a distortion of the purpose you're trying to achieve by the process you're using to achieve it. We see procurement processes which are over-emphasising certainty and safety and risk elimination and the primacy of rules, and we see the underestimation, the under-emphasis on uncertainty, natural uncertainty. Public services are complex things. The responsibility of the public sector officers to deal. The risk of acting without critical assessment is a real risk. We see administration over professional application. And so that attitude to purpose, that focus on purpose, really obviously should be driving everything. Starting with the consultation exercises and the engagement exercises to work out what the actual needs are, rather than starting with process-driven assumptions about what those needs are, which might not be quite accurate now or ever. Right through to the contract and the management of the contract, which is often seen as transactional, in a traditional way, but really a public service contract, and you might say any contract, is really about working relationships and delivery of purpose, and that is massively underestimated, even within the context of the written documentation that reflects the contractual relationship. The fourth big problem is one that follows from some progressiveness. We now all are familiar with the concept of social value, or a macroeconomic version of it, which is public value. But we're not quite recognizing what it really means and using it in the right way. We understand, of course, this concept means there's something valuable beyond the basic price service transaction. There's something else there. But the truth is, in public services, the public value is everything. What you're trying to achieve is the delivery of best value public services, and it's the center of every consideration. It is the purpose you're trying to achieve. And at the moment, that hasn't quite changed the systems we use enough to make that the reality. We're tending to think of social value as an added thing, as a 10% thing, not as the whole centerpiece of what we're trying to achieve. It's the starting point, social value. It's the guiding imperative. It's the only test of success, and it still hasn't got that centrality. The thing about social value and public value, of course, is they're not easily measurable. They're not easily understandable in some ways. They're difficult. They're complex. That's why they're the central concept within, or should be the central concept within public services. The fifth issue, the fifth problem, is the massive underestimation of the value of the public benefit sector. 30 years ago, charities were invited to professionalize, and they certainly have done so. We now have very mature, business efficient social enterprises. We have niche charities that are specialists in their field. We have community organizations mobilizing. That's a major sector. It's not just an adjunct. It's not just something that is a good thing without being recognized to be a fundamentally good thing and a fundamental central element within public service delivery. Public benefit organizations are purpose aligned with the public sector. They're dedicated to achieving the same objectives. That's an alignment that is massively underestimated. So we should be focusing on that capability, that alignment, that business efficiency. We have seen in the last year to 18 months the COVID experience highlighting this great truth that there's a lot of value in the way, the intrinsic value in the way that public benefit organizations are organized and operate. Now, all of that leads to two further points, not problems, but prospective answers and solutions in some ways. The idea that we should be constructing community partnerships out of all public benefit stakeholders, the public sector, the public benefit sector, the community, the private sector to the degree that they're focused on purpose and interested in their local communities. Building partnerships, long-term partnerships, is really what public services ought to be about. We've got immediate problems. We've got need to focus on preventative things, but overall, we're trying to structure over the longer term. And community partnership is a mechanism and a way of thinking towards that objective. And that's really saying something else. Going back to my first point, which is that we're over-reliant on the concept. We're dominated by the concept that the market is the answer, that competition is the answer, that profit incentivization is the answer. That almost ignores the other great motivation within society and especially within public service delivery, which is we're all motivated by doing the right thing, by achieving the proper outcomes, by the impacts that we achieve. And we can collaborate in that. So putting together collaboration and a theory of collaboration alongside the theory of market and competition, both can be efficient in their own ways. But at the moment, there's a massive imbalance with the overemphasis on the market theory. We really need a collaboration theory. And the toolkit we're talking about here and a lot of E3M's work is very dedicated to that idea. Thank you.